Turmoil deepens in Downing Street as UK Prime Minister Liz Truss sacks Kwasi Kwarteng as Chancellor in a bid to stabilise the economy.
The war in Ukraine overshadows this year's Russia-Central Asia summit in Astana. Vladimir Putin says he does not regret his full-scale invasion.
Controversy surrounds a series of explosions in the Russian city of Belgorod. Moscow says Ukraine striked the city, while Kyiv says it was due to a stray Russian missile.
Turmoil within Britain's government has deepened with the sacking of Kwasi Kwarteng as Chancellor of the Exchequer. Prime Minister Liz Truss, a close friend of Kwarteng, said she was replacing him to stabilise the economy after his planned controversial tax cuts had spooked the financial markets. Despite having devised those reforms with Kwarteng, Truss said he had to go.
Good afternoon. I met the former Chancellor earlier today. I was incredibly sorry to lose him. He is a great friend, and he shares my vision to set this country on the path to growth. Today, I have asked Jeremy Hunt to become the new Chancellor. He's one of the most experienced and widely respected government ministers and parliamentarians, and he shares my convictions and ambitions for our country.
The appointment of Jeremy Hunt is seen as an attempt to reassure the markets and voters that the government is turning away from radical monetarist policies that had been so unpopular with both. They had caused a collapse in support for the Conservatives, handing an almost unprecedented lead in the polls to the opposition. A lead that top party figures feared would be insurmountable ahead of elections in 2 years.
The war in Ukraine overshadowed this year's Russia-Central Asia summit held in Astana. Russian President Vladimir Putin met with leaders of former Soviet republics who did not hide their concern about what is happening in Ukraine, a country that was also part of the USSR. Now, all eyes are on whether the leader will attend the G20 summit. Even in Astana, reporters asked if he will be seeing the US president soon.
You have to ask him if he's ready to hold this negotiation with me. Frankly speaking, I see no necessity.
Putin also talked about an alleged connection between the humanitarian corridors transporting Ukrainian grain with the attack on a bridge in Crimea, dropping a veiled threat.
The Federal Security Service said that most of the so-called cargo, you can call them explosives, was sent by sea from Odessa. But it's not yet verified if it was done with the help of the cargo ships carrying grain. If it is found that the humanitarian corridor was used for committing the terrorist attacks, of course, it would question the existence of this humanitarian corridor.
Asked whether he regretted launching a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the Russian president said if he had not done so, the situation would be much worse for his country.
Moscow claims that this apartment block in the Russian city of Belgorod was attacked by Ukrainian artillery not far away across the border. Ukraine, however, says that this is not true and that it was the result of a Russian missile headed for Kharkiv that went awry. It comes just a day after Russia was condemned by the Council of Europe. Ukrainian President Zelensky said, "We also have a powerful response from the Council, which is the first international organization to designate the current regime in Russia as terrorist. It's very important that this is a political signal, a signal to all the states, members of the Council of Europe and all states of the world, that there is nothing to talk about with this terrorist group, which appropriated Russia and unleashed the most heinous war in Europe in 80 years. After 7 months of occupation, this area in Kherson region has recently been liberated by Ukraine. Russia has been losing ground here in recent days. The Moscow-appointed chief of the area says that they will begin evacuating civilians from Kherson city as the fighting slowly approaches. But the Kremlin is not giving up without a fight. Strikes continue across the country, like here in Velika Kostromka in the south of Ukraine. In the latest round of attacks, an 11-year-old boy has died in hospital after being rescued from the rubble in the town of Mykolaiv. Kyiv's Western allies are talking tough against the possibility of a nuclear strike against Ukraine. Russian President Vladimir Putin has hinted that the use of nuclear weapons is not out of the question. The EU has made it clear, though, that the response would be robust.
Any nuclear attack against Ukraine will create an answer. Not a nuclear answer, but such a powerful answer from the military side that the Russian army will be inoculated, and Putin should not be bluffing.
NATO has also warned that it will not be intimidated by Russia and takes its threats seriously.
President Putin's nuclear rhetoric is dangerous and irresponsible. We take these threats seriously, and we remain vigilant. We will not be intimidated. Any use of nuclear weapons would fundamentally change the nature of the conflict and have severe consequences.
The US is by far the largest power in NATO. It says Russia is upping the ante and not the alliance.
Irresponsible and reckless rhetoric is dangerous. And so as we've witnessed nuclear saber rattling, we don't think that's very helpful. And again, it's dangerous. NATO, again, does not pose any threat to Russia.
The possibility of nuclear conflict in Ukraine has forced Western leaders to talk tough. If it comes to pass, they may have to act tough too. The US committee investigating the January the 6th riot at the Capitol has voted unanimously to subpoena former President Donald Trump, compelling him to provide testimony. The committee believes that he is the central character in what happened on that day.
This is a question about accountability to the American people. He must be accountable. He is required to answer for his actions. He's required to answer to those police officers who put their lives and bodies on the line to defend our democracy. He's required to answer to those millions of Americans whose votes he wanted to throw out as part of his scheme to remain in power.
Trump has already said on his social media platform that he thinks the subpoena is a sham. So it is likely that he will try to avoid appearing before the committee by all means. In the meantime, the Commission has released new images of the events under investigation. New images of the crowd out of control.
They need massive personnel now.
And of Democratic leaders Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer in the most tense moments of the invasion of Congress.
Right now and see what...
A pair of climate activists have thrown soup on one of the world's most recognizable paintings, Vincent van Gogh's Sunflowers, before gluing themselves to the wall. They are part of a group called Just Stop Oil, which is calling for an end to new oil and gas projects in the UK.
What is worth more, art or life? Is it worth more than food? Worth more than justice? Are you more concerned about the protection of a painting or the protection of our planet and people? The cost of living crisis is part of the cost of oil crisis. Fuel is unaffordable to millions of cold, hungry families. They can't even afford to heat a tin of soup.
The painting, which hangs behind glass, was unharmed by the attack. The demonstrators have been arrested on suspicion of criminal damage and aggravated trespass. The action is just the latest climate protest in the UK as the government opens new licensing applications for North Sea oil and gas exploration.
A report by the European Union's anti-fraud watchdog has found that the EU's border agency Frontex covered up illegal pushbacks of migrants from Greece into Turkey. The findings suggest top managers committed serious misconduct and other irregularities in hiding incidents, not investigating them, or handling them incorrectly. The 120-page OLAF report that was made public on Thursday says these illegal pushbacks are a fundamental violation of the people's rights. For years, many NGOs have claimed massive human rights abuses on the EU's borders, especially during the last massive migrant wave created by the war in Syria. And some Frontex staff did speak out. Concerns were raised after one worker witnessed Greek authorities forcing migrants back onto a flimsy boat into Turkish waters.
The report raises questions about how Frontex will continue to operate in Greece.